I think people is going to come and ask us, how should we do this?
I knew intuitively that I was connected to the land.
This reserve is 65 acres now. It was over 5,000 acres.
When I was younger, I used to spend the entire day outside.
The water is the most sacred thing in life.
So I really love the earth, and I'm still connected to the earth.
It was always in me.
Mi'kmaq and Maliseet people have lived in the territory now known as New Brunswick for at least 8,000 years. For millennia, the Maliseet people have lived along the St. John River in New Brunswick, and their territory extended into parts of what is now Quebec and Maine. Mi'kmaq territory encompasses all of present-day Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and eastern New Brunswick, and parts of present-day Quebec. Metabonagia First Nation, where I'm from, has been home to my people for over 3,000 years. Archaeologists have learned that Metabonagia, one of the Mi'kmaq communities, is the oldest continuously inhabited location that we know of so far in New Brunswick. As nations and as individuals, we have endured and persisted through tremendous changes in our communities and the landscapes we inhabit. In the summer of 2013, 5 high school students from Metabonagia traveled around Mi'kmaq territory in New Brunswick. They interviewed elders in the different communities to find out how our people's relationships with the land and water have changed since they were younger. They also wanted to find out what our elders knew about the way their parents and grandparents and even their ancestors lived. 2 students from Tobic First Nation did the same thing in Maliseet communities. The students learned a great deal about our history and how our people valued the land and water, the plants and animals. But they learned even more about how important the land is still to our elders and why our connection to this place is not just historical, it's traditional and spiritual too. For thousands of years, the seasons influenced where and how the people lived. People were semi-nomadic and followed available food. Transportation was either on foot or via handcrafted canoe, and the size of households changed in different seasons.
And where did they go? They went where the food was. So in the winter time, they went into the woods where the deer and the moose they gathered during the winter. They live in herds, so that's where our people went in. But they only went there in a small family. A small family would go where a deer or herd were, and then they would break up because you can't all live off of it. You can't live in a big family off of one deer or one herd deer. Maybe one or two families together.
Well, a lot of the meals were fish, trout, salmon, bass, fiddleheads, lugalled. Those were things that we ate. A lot of vegetables. We didn't have lots of meat.
In the summer, when fish and other aquatic animals were plentiful, people lived in larger groups near rivers or along the ocean to harvest, smoke, and store fish and the meat of sea mammals for the winter months, and to trade, conduct political negotiations, marriages, and share other celebrations and ceremonies. In our traditions, we integrate spiritual, cultural, social, and biophysical elements. Humans are understood to be part of the ecosystem, bestowed by the Creator with the very special role of stewards or caretakers of the lands, waters, plants, and animals.
It was always in me. I remember ever since I was a little kid, I liked being in the woods, and I even remember when my grandfather had a farm, like a big hay field, and I remember walking, just running through the hay. It was long, and then my head would be sticking up a little bit, and then I just lay down, like maybe it was an oat field or something. Just enjoying the sunshine, animals, the birds.
And it comes from my language. I speak Mi'kmaq language fluently. And without being told specifically, or without my parents telling me specifically that you come from the land, as I was growing up, I knew intuitively that I was connected to the land.
And they bring in these big excavator, big machinery to do the cutting in the woods. They have big fishing boats. Our people never did those things, you know. We cut what we needed back in those days. We needed basketwood or axe handles. We only cut that much. We didn't cut acres and acres of land, you know, and clear cut it. We only took what we needed. Same thing with fishing. We only fished what we used. And hunting is the same thing.
Well, they went in the woods to get them. You know, they're done it now. They're in our communities. We used to have to go hunt them in the woods. Now they're coming in our own communities, you know. We've had bears here. Remember the bears that were stuck in the tree here a couple of summers ago? Baby bear. Plus we have deer coming in here all the time now because they cleared all our land out. They have nowhere to go. Of course they're going to come where they smell food and stuff, eh? That's what I see is different. People have no respect anymore. You know, they don't respect the land like they used to.
So I do know that everything that happens to the world, to the land, I am affected by it.
Our people used oral traditions to store and transfer knowledge and information. We did not create a written record of our history or our traditional practices. We used stories to pass information from generation to generation. Our stories contain important cultural information about values and behavior, and they also contain our scientific information about medicinal and food plants, where and when to hunt and fish for certain species of animals. And our stories contain historical information about important cultural events and even climatic events such as droughts and floods.
Growing up I found it was a good life. It wasn't nothing exciting, but you know, it didn't take much to excite you at that, you know, many years ago. If something new showed up, it wasn't like it is today. At that time, when you were like, even myself, sitting around when the old ladies come over and they tell you stories from other reserves, I used to like listen to that too. I don't know. It was interesting to see what they do in another reserve. And they'll go to another house, they'll do the same thing. Eventually they'll go back to the place where they came from and tell all about our reserve.
My grandmother was, they called her a healer because she knew all the medicines, and people would go to her all times of the day, sometimes in the middle of the night when people were feeling sick. They used to knock on the door and ask my mother for something to help them with whatever was bothering them. And I remember my mother going out to gather medicines. But I never went with her, but I remember her going out. I remember when I was a child, sweetgrass hanging all around the house for it to dry because she was a basket maker too. And you would see she would be cooking something on her stove, like cedar, the water for a tea or whatever. But I remember my grandmother using cedar on my little cousin Annie, because Annie couldn't walk till when she was about 3 years old, and she couldn't walk, and she was using her cheeks of her bum to walk, like that, and that's how she walked till she was about 4. And then my grandmother, she put some cedar, she boiled cedar, and she stuck a rag inside of the cedar, and then she would put it on her legs and bathe her legs in it. She started walking after a while.
The earliest records of European contact with the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet people tell us that the herds, flocks, schools, and runs of both terrestrial and aquatic animals were far larger than they are today.
Oh my, they loved to fish, and we had lots and lots of salmon. You could see the salmon when I was a little girl. You could look in the water and see all the fish. Can't see that now.
Flocks of migrating birds were described as so dense they blocked out the sunlight. The herds of deer were larger, and they roamed far wider territories than they do today. Moose were more abundant as well, and caribou, which are now extinct in New Brunswick, were hunted for food and a variety of other uses for many generations. Fish runs were so plentiful, it was said that rivers seemed to be made of fish.
I can't remember ever saying that I was cold or hungry, or I wanted this or wanted that. I was very happy with what I had. And I guess if you never had it, you can't miss it. So we never had running water. We loved our water. We never had furnaces. We had a wood stove, an old wood stove, and things like that. It was a family setting, like the old days. Like it was my grandmother, and my father, and my mother, and my brothers and sisters, and also my uncles that lived around here. We all lived together in that one little spot, you know.
We used to live off the land. We were didn't have as many resources as we do now in 2013, but back in the 50s and 60s, people were actually poor, meaning that when we were younger, we had to trap rabbits. You trap them in the morning, or put the trap on in the morning, get them after school or in the evening, and that would be your meal for the next day. We would also go hunting for partridge and pheasant, and again, what we killed is what we ate.
When we were younger, we used to have to go eat some rabbits, like snare them and all that. ducks, yeah, muskrats, beavers, stuff. My sister, she's up from Red Bank, and she used to call us. She said, put a couple in the springtime before spring. She said, put away about 4 muskrats, so when I come down this winter, you can cook them up. Because we always put 4 away for like this. You can bake them, put them in gravy and potatoes and stuff like that, and you can fry them. Even the tails, they like the tail. Tails, there's no meat on it, but it's the flavor. Like you just skin it, and you put it on top of a wood stove. And then when you have a wood stove on there, then you put a little bit of salt on there. And you more like suck on it. You don't eat it, eh?
When we were hungry, they went to hunt. Or when we were hungry, they'd get the potatoes. Like they did trade. I remember my father and my uncles trading their baskets for food. Corn, potatoes, and stuff like that. So they could eat. So they could feed their families is more like it.
I remember my father had skinned a big large beaver, and then he'd make a hoop of an alder hoop in order to stretch his skin, but he had no string. I said, what's going on? But he had to tie the beaver pelt on the hoops in order to make it stretch. He went in the woods. He came up with a string or something. I said, where did you get that? It was the inner bark of cedar. The inner bark of cedar was very tough. And he was making a rope thing. He was just tying it off.
Every item found in, on, or around a person's body, home, or camp was derived directly from the surrounding ecosystem. If people did not have access to particular items in their immediate territory, they traded with members of other clans or nations during summer gatherings. Anything they traded was also obtained or crafted directly from the resources of the land or water. This included their food, housing, and temporary shelter, floor coverings, bedding, clothing, pots, pans, cups, bowls, utensils, sinks, heat for cooking and warmth, medicinal equipment, medicines and ointments, means of transportation for people and their supplies, hunting equipment and weapons, musical instruments, soap, cosmetics, decorations, ceremonial objects, toys, games, and tools and equipment to make containers to store all of these things.
Even like grown-up or adult birds, I used to catch them with my hand in the woods. They'd be up on big thick spruce tree, white spruce. I'd snake up to them, and there were, and I'd just go in the fall. We'd get the beaver, a couple beaver, maybe 3. We'd take it home. I'd watch them skin the beaver. The beaver pelts were worth money. And saved the meat. Of course, we'd have beaver stew. I liked it. My mother didn't like it.
And we were pushed onto reservations or reserves that we really couldn't do much with farming or enough timber to sustain one person or family. And living on reserve, you're limited to resources such as food, lumber, farming. So yes, we still have connection to the land.
Men hunted, fished, and constructed the necessary equipment to do so, including birch bark canoes, weapons, and so on. Women butchered mammals, birds, and fish, stripped, smoked, and stored the meat for food, sinew for thread, bone for clasps, and horns for storage. Children helped with these tasks, learning by doing. Children also assisted in gathering and drying reeds, and using them to weave mats and storage baskets. Many of their basic techniques of manufacture were highly complex and diversified. Variations in weaving methods were developed which allow the utilization of an enormous range of raw materials: cedar bark, basswood bark, rushes, cattails, nettles, Indian hemp, sweetgrass, spruce roots, wood fibers, rawhide, and tendon thread. Even porcupine quills were incorporated into Mi'kmaq weaving.
I was selected to go to school. So I never learned much about fishing. I never learned much about hunting. And but I did pick up some summertime, and now that I'm retired, I'm doing it now, and I love it.
People also hunted sea mammals, including whales, dolphins, walruses, harbor seals, gray seals, and harp and hooded seals. A variety of bird and terrestrial mammals were also hunted with bow and arrows or trapped. At least occasionally, during the summer months, they fished with hook and line for cod, plaice, various skates, sea trout, and striped bass. Shellfish, including clams, scallops, whelks, mussels, and in some places oysters, were also gathered during spring and summer.
And then other people, mind you, I was young at the time, they would go hunting for deer and moose and bear. And people would actually share their food with other people. Meaning if your uncle shot a moose or a deer, he would share that meat amongst his family members.
In the centuries before the arrival of the first Europeans, the people had mastered techniques which enabled them to manufacture the necessities of life, from animal bone, ivory, teeth and claws, shells, quills, hair and feathers, fur and leather, from clays and native copper, from stone, wood, roots, bark, and a variety of plants. Nothing was wasted.
Nothing was wasted. My father took the deer head sometimes, and he made he'd chop it up, saw them, and he made what would that call that? Head cheese.
Traditionally, the people of the Atlantic region were educated informally through processes developed within their own culture over many centuries. By observation, imitation, participation, and socialization, children acquired the knowledge, skills, and values which they needed to function effectively as adults.
My family grew up, we learned language. We understand their customs and their traditions.
A lot of people turned away, especially the elders. And I was told it's a little dangerous. You might get fired from your job if you can do the smudging. But we kept doing it, and within 5 years, there was a lot of smudging going on at the school. And people didn't turn away from it anymore. I'm especially proud of that. Very, very proud of that.
Today, our people still have many of these skills and much of this knowledge, but we have also lost a lot. We are at a crossroads, as we have seen in the stories told to us by our elders. What happens next is up to all of us.
That's the dare song when you're in trouble.
Approximately 14,000 First Nations people live in New Brunswick today. About 2/3 of the people live on one of the 15 reserves, and the other third live off reserve. There are 6 Maliseet communities and 9 Mi'kmaq reserves in New Brunswick, with populations ranging from 35 to over 2,000 people. The smallest community is Fort Folly, and the largest is Elsipogtog.
I think they're realizing that something went wrong somewhere.
Well, I grew up in a time when nobody wanted to be Indian. Yeah, my parents and my grandparents always taught, my uncles always taught us to be proud of who we were, in spite of what everybody said or thought about you. Our elders today are either gentle, quiet, these soft-spoken people, and it's only because they've lived the hard life. They went through a hard time and they know what it's like. So they try to show there's another life. There's something better. And there is something, but you just gotta look for it.
When I was younger, I used to spend the entire day outside.